Welcome to a new episode of Essentials, the series where we try to unravel the drivers of the current political unrest in the West. The main question in the previous episodes has been, what feeds the anger and the frustration of many people that leads to the current unrest? Multiple reasons for the discontent have been addressed. We have seen that there is a large group of people which are struggling in the current economic and cultural environment. Economic globalization has taken away their jobs and have put their governments in a competitive position with each other to seduce international companies and investors. This led to pressure on the sovereignty of countries. See how Elon Musk deals with various countries, such as the UK and Brazil. In addition, we saw that the neoliberal policies strengthened the positions of the wealthy by the rise of rentier capitalism. Then, this vulnerable group also lost the dominant position of their traditional values in the Western societies. The white male laborer with his traditional family was no longer the center of society. At the same time, the natural ally of these vulnerable groups, the center-left parties, have abandoned them by embracing neoliberal policies. The Labour Party, the Democrats, the PVDA and the SPD shifted to the right. Consequently, the vulnerable groups have no saviors in the political center anymore. The result is that these people are angry and frustrated, and they turn to more extremist political movements. These do take them serious and do promise to give them back their economic and cultural piece of the pie. Consequently, these people are open for populists who understand and comfort them. Finally, they have someone who fights for them again. Populists promise to do something about the job losses, about the immigrants, and about the elite, who only works for themselves. So, what exactly do these populists promise? What is the essence of their political programs? What makes them so attractive for so many frustrated and angry people? We will look into their economic policies and their cultural policies. In this episode of Essentials, we will start with their economic policies, and specifically with trade protectionism. For populists, trade protectionism is the answer against economic globalization and the loss of jobs. Let's start with a simple definition. Trade protectionism refers to the economic policy of restricting imports from other countries to protect domestic industries. Think of it as a giant umbrella that a country uses to shield its businesses from external competition. Governments use various tools to create this protection, such as tariffs, which are taxes on imported goods, quotas, which limit the amount of a product that can be brought in from abroad, and subsidies, which provide financial support to local industries to help them compete. These measures make foreign goods more expensive or harder to get, encouraging people to buy domestically produced products. On the surface, this sounds like a good thing, supporting local businesses, protecting jobs, and boosting the national economy. But, as with most things in economics, there's more to the story. Let's explore the pros and cons. One of the primary benefits of trade protectionism is that it helps protect domestic industries, especially new or struggling ones. This is often referred to as the infant industry argument. Imagine a small startup trying to compete against established global giants. It's tough. By imposing tariffs or quotas, the government can give these smaller companies the breathing room they need to grow and become competitive. Take South Korea, for example. In the 1960s, South Korea used trade protectionism to nurture its fledgling technology sector. Fast forward a few decades, and companies like Samsung and LG are now household names around the world. Another significant advantage of trade protectionism is job preservation. By shielding industries from foreign competition, jobs are protected. Let's look at a real-world example. In 2002, the United States imposed tariffs on imported steel to protect its domestic steel industry. The move was controversial, but the intention was clear: protect American jobs in the steel sector from being lost to cheaper foreign imports. While it did help stabilize employment in the short term, the overall impact is still debated among economists. We will come to that later. Then, there's national security. Some industries are critical for a country's safety and independence. Think of the defense sector or agriculture. No country wants to be reliant on others for their food supply or military equipment, especially in times of crisis. By protecting these key industries, a country can ensure it maintains control over its essential resources and capabilities. For example, many countries impose restrictions on foreign ownership and control of companies involved in their defense sector to maintain national security. A positive side effect of trade protectionism might be for climate change. It might lead to less transport of goods around the world, which will be good for the carbon footprint. Now let's talk about the downsides. One of the most immediate effects of trade protectionism is higher prices for consumers. When tariffs are imposed on imported goods, it makes them more expensive. Who pays for that increase? We do, the consumers. During the US-China trade war, American consumers saw prices rise on a wide range of products, from electronics to everyday household items. Higher tariffs mean higher costs for businesses, which often pass those costs down to us. And even if we start to produce these products ourselves in our own country, then they are probably more expensive than produced in China or Vietnam. So while trade protectionism might protect jobs in one industry, it can lead to higher costs across the board. But maybe there is a solution to this problem. Governments might compensate the higher prices with the additional revenues of the import taxes. Another downside is that trade protectionism can lead to reduced economic efficiency. According to the economic theory of comparative advantage, countries benefit most when they specialize in producing goods and services where they are most efficient and trade with others for what they need. Trade protectionism disrupts this natural flow by encouraging countries to produce everything domestically, even if it's not cost-effective or efficient to do so. For example, if a country excels at making cars, but insists on producing all its electronics domestically as well, it might end up using more resources and producing less output than if it specialized and traded with others. This argument might be true from an economic theory perspective. It still sounds too neoliberalistic. Probably these mentioned benefits of free international trade only end up with the corporates and the wealthy. I don't expect the low and middle class to benefit, so maybe this disadvantage of trade protectionism is not a real problem. And then there's the issue of retaliation. Trade protectionism can lead to trade wars, where countries retaliate against each other's trade barriers. This can spiral out of control, hurting businesses and consumers on both sides. The recent trade tensions between the US and China are a perfect example. Both countries imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of goods, disrupting supply chains and causing uncertainty in the global market. When countries retaliate against each other's protectionist policies, it can lead to a lose-lose situation where everyone ends up worse off. It might lead to job losses in the sectors which are internationally exposed, such as shipping companies and airlines, but also in sectors that export a lot of their production. Think about the automobile and airplane industry in Europe, for instance. So, where does this leave us? Trade protectionism is like walking a tightrope. On one hand, it can protect local jobs, support emerging industries, and ensure national security. On the other hand, it can lead to higher prices for consumers, reduced economic efficiency, and even trade wars, which might also lead to other job losses. The problem here seems to be that we import products which have been produced somewhere else. It has led to economic growth somewhere else at our expense. Maybe we should just invite these companies to produce in our countries. Don't bring in the products, but bring in the factories. It might not be most cost-effective for companies, but I'm no longer impressed by that kind of neoliberalistic arguments. They only benefit the rich. And mind you, you can only apply trade protectionism if your domestic economy is large enough, such as the US or the EU. France, Britain, Sweden, or the Netherlands should never apply this on their own. They might loose everything. So, maybe the populists have a case with trade protectionism, but it will only work in a whole framework of linked policies, not just some political muscle showing. That will not work. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Essentials. If you found this explanation of trade protectionism helpful and thought-provoking, don't forget to subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.